We are here in our church on this campus, we're going through Exodus right now. I just remind you of that in case you're here for the first time. There are these books, they're free, they're at the exits. You can grab one on your way out. Inside, it's the readings for each day of the week, followed by a place to do some journaling. The really cool thing is that on the back of the book, there's a website called seedbed.com/wakeupcall. I don't provide this, my buddy JD Walt provides this, and he is awesome. He will take just one verse and change your life with it. And every single day, Monday through Saturday, you get to engage that. I've said to some of you that if the reason you haven't subscribed yet is because you already get too many emails, then I would invite you for a season to unsubscribe from my weekly e-news and put this one in its place because you'll get so much out of this. I want to remove any obstacles. We are about a third-ish through the book of Exodus. We're not going chapter each week like we've done in a couple other books of the Bible. But we are making our way through the book of Exodus so that we'll get to the end of the 40 chapters at the end of November, so that we can then move into Advent, which is that season of waiting for the birth of Christ. We'll do the Advent series the Sundays of December. But last week we were in chapter 14, and if you were here, you probably remember it's one of the most memorable parts of the book of Exodus. If you think about the book of Exodus, the movies you've seen of it, or the book of Exodus that you've read maybe, you'll remember that there's like the burning bush story. That's a popular part of this. There's the 10 commandments that come on the mountain to Moses, right? But then the third one comes between those two, and it's probably even more memorable. It's the crossing of the Red Sea. As I said last week, some people have tried to dismiss that moment as being not so miraculous by saying, no, Pastor, the Red Sea could also be translated as the Sea of Reeds, and the Sea of Reeds is only about 18 inches deep. And so the people of God didn't really walk through parted waters. They just walked through a shallow sea, which is fine. It's not true, but it would be fine until you realize that not only did thousands and thousands and thousands of Israelites walk through this land, which the Bible calls dry ground, but then thousands or so Egyptians followed them into that same body of water, and they all drowned to death and washed up on the shore. I've not been in 18 inches of water very often that drowns thousands of chariots and drivers and horses, nor spit them onto a shore. But this is how we do it. In fact, I didn't say this in the first service, but I heard a story about and maybe you heard JD tell this story somewhere, of a 7-year-old kid. He was off at children's church. And you really should ask your kids what they learn over there, because they learn a lot. But it was sort of like that, where the 7-year-old kid comes out and the mom and dad say, hey man, what did you learn today in children's church? And the kid was so excited to share the story. He said, Mom and Dad, we learned about Moses. And we learned about how Moses went behind enemy territory, snuck into this Egyptian area and got all of these people free. He didn't do it in a common way. He leads them out. There were all these plagues. There was storms and fires and bugs and all the stuff. And they got to this big body of water where they dropped down this floating bridge. And this floating bridge, they put it all out. I don't know where they got all the supplies, but they put it out. And all the Israelites walked across this floating bridge. And when they got towards the end, they looked back. They saw Egyptians were on their bridge. So then these fighter pilots came flying through the air, dropping bombs on this bridge. And it just took out the bridge. And all the Egyptians and their horses, they all drowned. And all the Israelites made it safely. And the mom and dad said, wait a second. Are you sure that that's what they taught you in Sunday school today? And he goes, well, no, it wasn't anything like that, but I'm afraid that if I told you what they told me, you wouldn't believe a word of it. It's an old preacher story, but it's kind of true. There's a lot of things happening in here that to the thinking person, as our atheist and agnostic friends would say, to the thinking person, none of this could happen. It's kind of a good thing that we're out of our minds. Because God can do things that our minds could never understand or make sense of. But there were thousands of people who bore witness to this, and others who never saw their Egyptian friends come back, who may have wondered whatever happened to them. This is a historical moment of our people. Our people walked through the Red Sea. Our people end up being led by Moses. Our people walk through all the way until they get to a promised land when Joshua shows up to take them in. This is the story of our people. And this story will continue and continue and continue to this current day, and by God's grace, beyond us, if we'll continue to do what the people of God have always done. What do you do after you've walked through a big old Red Sea with wall-high water on either side. You're on dry ground. What do you do when you've experienced such a thing? Well, in Exodus chapter 15, they do what you would do if you had walked through such an experience. They sang. They sang. Exodus chapter 15 is the only chapter we're going to deal with today, and it's a song, a long song. Not as long as Freebird, but long. It's a long song. And I want you to be thinking as we go through this today, maybe I've never personally, I know I haven't, walked on dry ground through the Red Sea. I've not done that. I suspect none of you have either, but our people have. But what you have experienced is a moment where you thought there was no way through, there's no way out, and God showed up. You prayed a prayer that you waited and waited and waited to have answered, and finally it was answered. There was a broken relationship, there was an addiction, there was a job you were looking for, there was a sickness. And as you walked through it, you got to the other side of it. Maybe you even find yourself in the middle of it now. You start looking around and you see God is a part of this, and God has not left me, God has not forsaken me, God is here, and there's a song that's brewing in you. And I want to wake that song up. So in chapter 15, the first 21 verses, I'm going to read to you the song. I'm not going to have it on the screen, as I never do, because in the early church, you didn't read the scriptures. You listened to the word of God so that you could hear from God a word. And so I want to invite you to do that. Chapter 14 ends like this. But the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. And that day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of God displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord, or honored the Lord. They put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted, both horse and driver he is hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him. My father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, Lord, was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger. It consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The surging waters stood up like a wall. The deep waters, they congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I'll pursue, I'll overtake them. I'll divide the spoils. I will gorge myself on them. I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working wonders? You stretch out your right hand, and the earth swallows your enemies. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you've redeemed. In your strength, you'll guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and will tremble. Anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling, and the people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on all of them. By the power of your arm, they will be still as stone until your people pass by, Lord, until the people you bought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling. The sanctuary, Lord, your hands established. The Lord reigns forever and ever. And then closing, when Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam the prophet, Aaron's sister, and I'll add Moses' sister, took a timbrel, like a beating instrument or like a tambourine kind of a thing, in her hand, and all the women followed her. And with timbrels and dancing, Miriam sang to them that first verse, sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted, both horse and driver he is hurled into the sea. It's a long song. It's the word of the Lord for the people of God. Thanks be to God. I'm grateful that they sang that day because their song long ago is instructive for us as we try to find our own words to sing the song of redemption that we've experienced in our modern day. First, we find in this song that the people are celebrating what God has just done, like just then. They recount what has happened with the waters being parted and then falling back on the Egyptians. In verse 1, we see this. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted, both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. This has just happened. And then verses 4 through 10, I won't reread the whole thing, but again, they're recounting that Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone. These are the verses that these people are singing is from firsthand eyewitness of what they just saw God do. What kind of song might be stirring in you right now of something God has just done for you? Something God has just done, maybe as recently as this morning, yesterday, this week. He's recently done a great thing. In this song, the writers of this song are also revealing who they've come to believe God is, his character, his nature, who they've experienced him to be over the long haul. They do this in the second and third verse and a couple other places, but just here, the Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. As if they're saying, this time we've been spending with the Lord, all of the things we're seeing him do, he has become my salvation. I can trust him. I can count on him. He is my God, and I will praise him. My father's God, I will exalt him. This God of my father, of my grandfather, is a God I can trust. I've grown to trust him over all these days, over all these years, over the generations. I've come to trust him. And then third, in this song, they're telling us what they believe God will do. They're singing a song about things that have yet to occur in verses 12 through 18. Again, I won't read it all again, but it says here in verse 12, you stretch out, not past tense, you stretch out your right hand, and the earth swallows your enemies. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. A little bit later in verse 17, again, you will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling. In this song, we get what he just did, what he's done, sort of who he is, and is built a trust and a confidence in who he will be. And it's all found in this one song. Now, as I'm reading through this very lengthy song, I got a couple questions. One, who wrote it? Who wrote this song? I mean, it says it right as chapter 14 ends, chapter 15 begins. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. How much time passed between the closing of the waters to the opening of this song? I don't know. We don't get any music to this song. And some of the Psalms, it might say to us, sing it to the tune of. And the tune of the songs, they're also ancient songs. I don't know how those sounded either. But in this case, there's all of these lyrics that Moses and the Israelites sing to the Lord. It has me wondering, did Moses write this song? And how long did it take him to teach them the lyrics? How long did it take him to say, this is who I know God to be. This is what I saw God just do. This is what I've known and seen God to have done over time. This is what I believe God will do in the future. I don't think he wrote this song by himself. I think this song was written as a community. I think that Moses and the Israelites started this song, and if someone thought of another line, they would just shout it into the room. Have you ever been to church camp or in a Bible study or a small group where you do this thing called popcorn praying? A popcorn prayer. Popcorn prayer is like this, not edible. But it's like, I'll say, let's go into a time of prayer, and then I'll say something, and then there'll be some silence, and then somebody else will just speak up, and then someone else will speak up, and then someone else will speak up, and it feels like little kernels of popcorn popping all over the place. I think that's how this song was written. I think there's this massive collection of Israelites who just walked through water together. Nobody got to walk through that the other didn't. I mean, it's all their story together. And they get to the other side of it and they're like, oh my God, look what you've done. And somebody just starts speaking it. And someone else starts speaking their part. And somebody else starts speaking their part. And we have this collection of 20 some odd verses of this collection of song. And I think that this song that they've given us that is, as I said, instructive for us and the kind of songs that we could be writing. Throughout this week, it was as if the Lord was saying, hey, let the people write the song. Because amongst you on Sunday mornings, as y'all gather up, there's a song that's there. It's a song that goes most weeks completely silent. It's a song that most of us show up on a Sunday morning and we listen to a song sung, and some of us join in. One of the beautiful things about the way that Josh and the team lead is that I've started to notice this amongst you, and I'm so grateful for it. That as a worship leader, what his role has become is I sing until I hear them singing. And then I back off a bit so that they can join me. And then kind of like in Joshua chapter 3 where the Israelite leaders move into the river with the ark and they stand there and let the people pass through them and then they follow the people out of the river. It's kind of like that's what y'all are doing in worship now. I had a dad say to me a couple weeks ago, you know, Brent, the quality of worship something is happening in the room that hasn't been here in a while. He said, I used to sing and my kids would tell me, Dad, sing softer. Everybody can hear you. But now they can't hear him anymore because the voices of those who are around them are singing so loud with so much confidence, so much faith. And that's what's happening in this room. And that's what I've been longing for, what happened in this place. You know, a few weeks ago I said, I want for you things that I don't even know you know are there for you yet. This is what I'm noticing. And if our 9 o'clock service is any indication of the longing of God to get the song out of your heart into the public place, oh, I wish you could have been here. You know, usually in the moment that we're about to walk into, a pastor says, I don't want to be embarrassed. And so he kind of finds some people in the room to like go first. No one knows that he's already asked people to go first. And I should have done that probably at 9 o'clock because we entered into a moment together and I had not asked anyone to go first and I was hoping that somebody would. But what I noticed was there is a song in this room. And each of you brought your own verse to this song. This is a song of God's faithfulness. This is a song that God showed up. And it's a song that I can't sing for you because I wasn't there when he showed up for you. And there's people in this room who are waiting, kind of like Jonah prayed earlier. They're waiting for someone to sing a song that acknowledges that God can do the thing they've been waiting for God to do. And so I had at least one of you stop on the way and go, so there's homework in this? There's an assignment in this sermon? There is. But I want to invite you to consider something. You may be, as I offer these instructions, you may go, yeah, this is silly. Maybe it is. But what I can tell you is that the Lord showed up at 9 o'clock in response to our song. And people sensed healing in their spirit as a result of the songs that were being sung around them. And I think there's people in the room who need to hear for the first time or again, I can trust God. God has been faithful. And so I'm gonna give y'all, I'm gonna pray us into this, but then here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna spend just a few minutes doing this. I promise we'll be done before Restoration gets out of church. You won't have to wait behind them at lunch. But I know this, that when the Woodlands Methodist Church decided almost 10 years ago to plant a campus out here, and when my family decided to pull up every route we had in Longview to come, we didn't come to join in on playing church with a bunch of new people. I don't think God needs more places for people to show up to play church. I think what God's desiring is to create spaces where he can encounter his people and they can encounter him. Where people who feel lost and alone can find a home in the presence of others who have found their home in him, who have found family. And so that's what we're making space for in the living room of God here this morning. I'm gonna lead us into a moment of prayer, and then what I'm gonna invite you to do is to take the little postcard that was given to you on your way in and the pen that was given you. And if you didn't get one, if you'll just put a hand in the air, there's people kind of around us that can give you one. Who has the extras? Someone have the extras? Look, my brother here needs a note card. All right, come on over here. We're gonna get you a note card and a pen. There's somebody back there too, back there. Isn't this kind of cool? Some of y'all grew up in Baptist churches where they made you close your eyes before the preacher said, I see that hand. But wherever there's a hand, we need a postcard and a pen because there's a song. There's a song that's waiting to be sung. While we're getting those pens and papers over, I want to set you at ease. We're not going to ask anyone to sing, a cappella at least. But I will tell you that at 9 o'clock, a woman did. And it was a pretty sweet gift to the room. All I'm asking you to do is to, with your pen and paper, is to write down a verse. It doesn't even have to rhyme. Hebrew poetry, Hebrew songs, they didn't rhyme. That wasn't the point. The theme of what they were writing rhymed with the line before it. They didn't have words that sounded alike. It was the theme of what was written in this verse would be similar to the theme that was written in this verse and so forth. So you don't have to rhyme. But what I want you to do is if you've had an encounter with the Lord recently, some time ago, or there's something you're longing for from the Lord going forward, some of you aren't trying to believe in going forward of the Lord, I want you to take your paper and your pen, and we're going to give you a couple moments, and I want you to write it down. I just want you to write it down. And then I want you to know that what you write down, you can keep to yourself if you choose to. But I think the Lord is inviting us to speak our lyrics out loud so that the song that he's been writing in us can be heard, can be remembered, can be recalled. That some who don't have a verse to write can hear others that have been written. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to pray us into it, and I'm going to give you about 3 minutes or so to recall and to write it down. God, I've been convinced my entire life that you have been writing songs on our hearts. You started it way back in the womb when you were making plans for what our life would look like. You began to form us in our mother's womb and then provide us to a mom and or a dad, to some other adults who would help us become the person you created us to be. I believe that there was a song almost that you were writing that you wanted our lives to sing. You wanted our lives to tell. And some of us, we heard the music a long time ago. And others of us are still listening for the unfamiliar tune. But along the way, in this room, amongst the collection of us, for some of us, you've shown up really recently. You answered a prayer just this week that we'd been praying for a long time. It was a prayer for ourselves, or it was a prayer for someone we love. And we need to write down on this card that we saw you, that we heard you, so that we'll never forget it. God, others of us, we look back over our lives and we're trying to remember, we're trying to place our finger on the moment or maybe moments where we know you were there. We had wondered if you were with us and you showed up to prove yourself that you were there. And we need to remember that. And so we're going to write it down. We're going to write down that verse of the song that you've been writing from your people. And God, there's also some people here who, when I invite us to think about where you've been and what experiences we've had of you, there's some of us in the room who have been very polite not to laugh out loud because they've either actively resisted your presence, actively campaigned against the reality of who you are, or they've just finally, in an act of submission, they've had any hope of your presence beat out of them by life. So God, my prayer is that you would give them an active imagination, that you would restore to them a sense of curiosity, maybe even expectancy, that though they've never experienced you before, though you've been really hard to find in the past, though you've in some ways fallen short of the promises that they've expected you to make, that you haven't left. They might become confident enough of that they would even begin to write a lyric for where they need you to show up, where they're by faith, even the faith of the people around them, believing that you might still show up. God, whatever lyric they need to write, wherever you've been, wherever they need you to be, as they write it, God, would you be with us in the next few minutes? Draw near. Draw near. Holy Spirit, come. Draw near. Make your presence known amongst us. You're welcome here. Holy Spirit, take our pens and put them to the paper. Help us to write where you've been, where you'll be.